Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast with your host, Glenn Schmeltzley. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot. Today we're going to hear from someone who says that the problem with our marketing is our data. Let's get straight to it. You did everything just the way you were told. You took the tags the free tools gave you, you installed them on your site, you configured platforms, you poured over their reports, you connected the systems, you even hired developers to hook everything up to a database. And yet, you have little value to show for all the work you've put into your company's analytics. You feel the analytics platforms are backing away from their responsibility. They were supposed to streamline all this. Instead, the answer from the largest of the bunch, Google, is that they'll hold on to your data if you use their newest BigQuery tool, and you've got to pay them money to store your data. Or is it their data? Or your data? Well, somebody's data is being stored on it. The bad news is summed up in a 2023 book whose euphemistic name is Your Data is Flawed. Don't want to get an explicit rating here for using the actual name. And it was written by someone who empathizes with our situation and who lays out in the book the steps needed to generate positive financial returns for our analytics investment. Our guest started his career in London, but moved in 2014 to sunny New Zealand to work for a data-focused digital agency. That led him to founding and growing an analytics firm that served clients locally and in the UK and Australia and the US. Following the sale of that firm in 2022, he moved with his family back to the not-so-sunny UK, where he does consulting on digital analytics. His focus on analytics can also be seen through his volunteering at events such as Measure Camp and Web Analytics Wednesdays. Let's go talk with Mark Mckenzie. I'm so glad to welcome Mark Mckenzie. Welcome to Funnel Reboot.
Hi, Glenn. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. And the book that we are talking about today is called Your Data is Effed. Now, we have a version of it that says your data is flawed if people prefer, but your data is effed, and you can certainly type in the full words there, and it will show up as a book anywhere that people buy books. Can you tell me about what brought you to write the book?
Yeah, so I explained a little bit on the front cover of how I came around to it, but had a bit of a break in my career in terms of I had a company that I created and then I sold it, and then I had a role within that other company, and then I worked my way out, and then I found myself with a bit of a break, and I wanted to reflect a little bit on some of the things that I'd learned and some of the conversations that I'd had. And my first idea was I was going to put together a textbook, because I thought I'd just love to have a textbook. I mean, a lot of this stuff, it's not all mine. It's just other great authors that I've found and I've pulled together, and I've done my best to, quote them properly and make sure that their remarks are listed in the back, so everybody knows who wrote what, who did what. But I thought, yeah, I'll put together a textbook, and then I thought, no, because nobody will read that, and it seems a bit of a waste of time if I do that. So I thought, well, let's try and make it a bit easier. How about I write something that I would want to read? I write something that kind of I will be able to use, going forward whenever I might be doing a little bit of consulting or what have you, and just something that marketers might actually find interesting. I might pick that up, see it's interesting, and go, you know what, I'll give that a go. And so that's really how it came about. It was going to be a textbook, and then it turned into what it is now, for better or worse.
Sure. And yeah, I didn't know that it was originally thought of as a textbook. It certainly doesn't read like a dry textbook.
No, I had fun with it.
Yeah, you did. And we hear what Mark really thinks. I'd like to start with the fact that there might be people who think that they simply need to go through and take, let's say if their data is something that they have not been paying attention to, and that they can simply take it along this continuum that you talk about, and that it's a one and done project, and that they're always moving higher up, the sophistication or maturity curve
Yeah.
on their analytics. But I think one point that you made that really struck me was that there are events outside of our companies that are happening now. Like here we are, 2023 is when we're recording. It's affecting, in fact, dragging us lower down the maturity curve. There are Silicon Valley companies and regulators and a whole bunch of other players that are frankly making it harder for us. So to be, what do they say? To be moving slowly is like you're standing still, and to be standing still is like falling behind.
Yeah.
I think that is happening. Can you tell us a little bit about those external forces that are causing our companies to have a harder than usual time at doing this?
Well, I think there's a few different things. I mean, even in terms of tracking and even the tools that are on your site, if they're not regularly being maintained, they're not regularly being reviewed, just because your website is on a multitude of different browsers and devices, which are always changing even that is slowly breaking and unraveling. But in terms of a wider level, I guess there's a few kind of key factors that I touch a little bit on in the book. One of them, as you said, is the legal element. You got GDPR and everything like that. Tools are having to change in terms of where they actually even store the data, how that data can be collected. And I know that different countries say data or data. I tend to say data, but each their own. And so we need to be kind of aware of that happening, and then also as well, even what different marketing platforms you might choose to go on it. I mean, some of the stuff that we're seeing with Facebook, Meta now, and what we're seeing with all different social. I think what's the main one at the moment everybody's talking about, which is the one over in where they're concerned whether it's a Chinese company or not. I think it's
TikTok.
TikTok, that's a big one. So I talk a little bit about TikTok in there as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's difficult because these wider legal and almost like governmental concerns are affecting small businesses now, whether you decide to advertise on TikTok or not. I think all that kind of things, if you're not paying attention to it, it feels like you're starting to fall back. So I guess it's a legal element, and then that is then kind of driving into the technical element, which is whether or not we can use first or second or third party data, whether or not we can use cookies anymore. I mean, it's a lot to kind of keep up with, and I've done my best to try and summarize some of that a little bit more eloquently in the book.
Right, and I guess the way to summarize it is we're not just an island. Our own organization is, as you referenced with the countries like the US, saying that TikTok cannot be used because we don't know if the servers where the data is keeping the data are inside of China or if they're elsewhere. This is these large kind of geopolitical issues. Data sovereignty is what this one is called.
That's
right?
one of the subchapters. Yeah,
but they're crashing on our shores. We don't have a choice.
And one of the first times I came across, a client that didn't want to use Google Analytics was they were selling products in China, and the reason why they couldn't use Google Analytics is because China had already banned Google Analytics in China, because the Chinese were already potentially rightly, I don't know, concerned about the data being leaked out of China into America. So all this stuff that's happening with TikTok and everything now, it started a long time ago with the Chinese firewall, like even before. So it's interesting, and it has real world kind of effects for small businesses that will need to decide, what tools they put together in their stack. And so it can't just be a technological decision or a strategic decision. It actually now even needs to be a law-based decision. You need the legal team might need even to be involved.
Yeah, and it backs us into a conversation about other aspects of how we gather and use data. The As a backdrop to all of it, though, we must begin with the thought that our data is an asset, and you confront this problem where a lot of people don't think that it may not even be true of people who routinely open up Google Analytics and browse through one or two reports. That to you doesn't cut it as far as considering your data to be an entity that must be preserved, managed, and that your whole company has to care about. You mentioned, I'm going to call them the 4 Ps, where you have to think about the data provenance, the data privacy, the data protection, and the data preparation. And you have to do this from, if you're reading the book, no matter what your role in the company is, you have to start educating your peers and your managers on this information, and it might be the first time they're hearing it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, even as simple as having something like a measurement plan, and often when I say measurement plan,
What is a measurement plan?
people say, "What is a measurement plan?" And then I explain what a measurement plan, and people go, "Oh, I don't think we have time for that." Really, it's think of it just a spreadsheet. You can call it whatever you want, but a spreadsheet that effectively says these are the things that we care about. So on our website that we want to track because there are key things that we want people to do. And it says these are the things that we've set up. This is how they work. This is a trigger. This is who did it. This is the last time it was tested. And then if you can just spend 10 minutes a week updating that and making sure it's updated, or anytime you update the website, that would save so much more time down the road. Like, you talk about data being an asset. Like, if it's not maintained, it's a cost, because as soon as you go to do something, as soon as you go to launch a new campaign, or you redo the website, or you make some massive change, that's when you needed the data then to be able to make a good decision, or to be able to report back to stakeholders about how something did. That's when suddenly, by not perceiving it as an asset, it suddenly becomes a massive cost, and it becomes much more expensive than if you had maintained it a little bit along the road, than if suddenly you need to do some massive project that you hadn't planned for. So I think even something as simple as a measurement plan helps avoid this kind of, I call it the circle of, we'll say. So people have joked about the F thing, and obviously I've had issues where I haven't been able to write ads in certain places. So I've gone with your data is. I mean, Amazon's happy to publish it, but you can't run any ads. But that's fine. So I've gone with, there's 2 versions of this. Your data is effed, obviously, but people have joked that could just be forked. Who knows? It could just be forked. And then I've got your data is flawed. So that's why we've kind of balanced in the middle with your data is F. But I talk about the circle of F data, where effectively you start with this concept of a lack of understanding expertise, basically, and then flows into a low perception of value, because generally it's hard to value at something you don't really understand. You don't understand like what it could do for your company, or what it could do for your marketing campaigns if you had made sure that was at least at 10% of what you spend on ads. At least 1 to 10%, maybe 10's higher, too high, but and then how that can then lead into effectively inadequate tools and inadequate maturity, analytics maturity. So we spoke a little bit about, touched on that analytics maturity curve, which then kind of ends up in poor results. And if something's not performing very well, it's not delivering, it's frustrating, it's annoying, it's going to get lack of investment. And then you've got lack of investment, and then you're right back in the
And we've
beginning.
come around. Yes.
And it just leads to this constant of, the data is just always not working, and it's always frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's self-fulfilling, and it sounds very, I imagine the circle reference is a, Dante's Inferno idea, and we just stay there. We
Well,
cannot,
yeah,
get
I like
ourselves
I like
out.
the Dante's Inferno idea, because ultimately what it does mean is a lot of firefighting.
Right?
It's because it means that as soon as this stuff is only really paid attention to a day before the campaign goes live, and it's like
Or the
the
day before the
campaign,
board, it
yeah,
needs to see results.
and
Yes.
yeah, I've had so many of those different situations, and I really want to help. I really want to help, and I'd like to be able to help in a way that everybody's not running around and everything's on fire. You want to get there earlier on in the situation where we can set up governance, we can have measurement plans, people know the value of what we're doing, and we can just enjoy what this can deliver rather than it being a have to last minute panic situation.
Yeah. It's not a fun place to be when it's like that, and because the technologies, we've had successive waves of them. And while they're not just in analytics, what's probably at the forefront of people's mind is the change. In, let's say, the last 15 years, we've moved from uh, website server logs to Urchin to Google Analytics, the
Yeah.
classic and universal, and now, Google Analytics 4. And you point out that, and this is a quote,
Oh no.
your organization's analytics has fallen by the wayside. Perhaps some technological change has forced you back to the point of outmoded and unreliable data. And it's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
unreliable part that, I think your title is really calling out, because the natural state of that data is to be messy and of questionable use. And this is why people can't just content themselves with saying, I plugged in the tracking code,
Yeah.
it's on, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, it'll just give you, it just won't give you enough, and it'll give you just the basis out the box. This is how much traffic came to the site. Obviously, if you just put the code on, you get a lot more with GA4 by setting up enhanced tracking. But yeah, it needs to be customized to your independent organization. Um, and ideally, it needs to be something that the brand or the company owns. Like I think that these various, if we're talking about Google Analytics or different or whatever web analytics tool or tech tool that we're using, like the tool companies are there to they set up the tool, they want to be a software as a service, but they don't want to really deliver that consulting that comes with it, and that's fine. They're doing their piece. And then agencies have kind of taken on the role of working within these tools on behalf of clients, but because clients are busy and it's hard to hire for everyone. But I do think this is one area, time and time again, and especially going forward, that the clients or the brand or however we want to define them need to start kind of taking up that bit, because they're the only ones that know their business, know their business strategy, their marketing strategy, what they care about tracking. And if they can take up that bit, own that bit, then when they work with different agencies and different tool providers, the switching costs are less. They can make sure they get good value for money, and they can get a better result. Like, for example, like, why would an agency, well, you hire an agency and they set up tracking for you, which is great, they're helping with that, but why are they deciding the key call to action, the key like conversion points on your website? Really, you should have a piece of documentation where you go, hey, so glad you'll come on board. These are the key conversion points on our website. These are the different other channels that we've tried. If you need any additional tracking or anything, here's our measurement plan, and you can have access even. and edit it as you go. And I just think, and what's happened with GA4, the switch from GA3 to GA4 would have been so much easier for so many businesses because they would have had all that documentation to run from, and then they would have just gone, okay, well, we just need to transition these events and conversions and this code and everything over to GA4. And we've got all that documentation. We could do that in a spreadsheet, and then we can give those instructions to the web developer or the consultant or whoever might be doing that role if they don't have someone in-house to do it. So I think that's compounded the problem. So that's, going back to your point is, so that's what, because you don't have that, that's where they might have been doing really well with GA3, and they can generally do better with GA3 in terms of analytics maturity, because the market itself, the people working in that market, have a higher maturity level because they know the product more, because it's been around for so long. GA4 is so different, and it's targeted towards different types of people. It's I feel like there was a period where they were they created a product, Google Tag Manager and everything, for marketers. It was going that way. This is for you marketers, and then it feels like they've gone, oh no, we're taking that back.
Yeah. or we're only developing this to the degree that a developer can then insert events. Yes.
Yeah. And I think GA4 now it's more designed for analysts, and I think it's more designed for developers. Even moving from category action label, if you're familiar with GA3, you set up an event, you kind of get your head around that. Like parameters, it's a better way of doing things for people within those fields, but I think it's more difficult for marketers. It's value pairs and all that kind of stuff. It's not how they think, and so you can see the switch. I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I feel like it definitely does move everyone back again to having to start not from scratch, but it's a big shift.
Marketers have to definitely run a couple of steps up the staircase of technical sophistication to get there. But I know we've been talking mostly about analytics, but your book clearly points out that as a company recognizes that their first-party data is involved here, and that there are some virtuous things that can be done when you put these tools together. If you're staying current with, we've had CRMs for a while, but marketing automation, and then a newer, piece of this puzzle being CDPs, customer data platforms.
Yeah.
The line in the book that I think made it real for me was when you said, but are you considering what you could use with the data? And let's not even for the moment assume that you have it. But if you did have it, what would you be able to do with it? How would you be able to personalize and help your customers through their journey? How would you be able to make them identify to you what level of interest they have, and that you could then respond accordingly?
Yeah, what's the reason for this? Where are we going? What's the direction? So, there's one in the sense of, so we've got our MarTech stack, and I'm a big believer of kind of every tool. Every tool should do its job within that stack, and all the tools should talk to each other. Get the best tool for the job, and get tools that talk to each other. Put that together in a solution design and work on a project plan and say, this is our stack right now, and this is what we can unlock with this stack. This is the stack we want in the future, and this is what we aim to be able to unlock with that stack. This is how much it's going to cost. This is how long it's going to take. And this is what the payoff's going to be. And have that document and have stakeholders weigh in, and have these conversations. Some of the most difficult things is it's not necessarily getting it depends on the company you work for, but it's not necessarily getting the budget written off in I've seen, because I've seen lots of big, expensive, terrible investments, but everybody is going, why did we pay for that? What happened? Like, who made that decision? And it might have been someone really senior up the chain that for some reason they just decided to make that call. But have the process in terms of, so the risk and readiness review is an idea for that process where you go, let's do that audit. Let's go through all the different kind of parts in terms of what's our current maturity level, what current tools do we have, what kind of data do we even have as a resource to put into this thing, and get everyone having that conversation, have it cheaply in one room before you go out and buy stuff. Like, and I have that and work out within the different departments where they disagree what the different opinions are, and making sure everybody has their say before we go out and buy stuff, and then use that information, use that time, because that costs money as well, to then inform the solution design and the project plan going forward. Like, that seems like a much better way to do things. And I think in some, one of the reasons I've often seen that not happen is actually this: people are afraid of the conflict. There's the personal element. There's there might be the dev team. They manage all the old infrastructure, and they're really overworked, and they've got this other thing that's planned, and then you've got the marketing team, and then you've got the executives, and they don't really have that framework to have that conversation, or they don't have that kind of that way to do that. And often where it's not happening is where I see that seems to be time and time again, is it's just that inertia you can't get past.
I mean, it requires people who each have their own specialty to reach across to others, but I can't think of what's more important than trying to aid the customers that we are even existing to serve. Like, without customers, there's no company. So we have to get into those uncomfortable discussions. You point out, you say the biggest problem that you encounter as you go, and talk to many different companies, is that the organization doesn't know their business strategy, and that this lack of direction makes all the measurement and analysis work that is being done pointless. If there isn't a plan for it, then the how is the marketer or data analyst possibly going to properly utilize a piece of data if nobody's told them why we care about that piece of data?
I think there can be kind of two things there. Either that everybody does know, actually, but they just don't agree on what it is. And then the other might also be it's known at the senior levels. So I've got a few silly examples in the book to try and liven things up, but one of them is the steamship, or the big boat that's going along, and the captain knows where he's going, or she knows where she's going, and nobody else within the boat knows what's happening, and they're shouting out to contractors or other suppliers out the porthole windows, going, "Where are we going? Do you know where we're going?" And it's kind of like trying to facilitate that communication within the boat, going, "Don't ask me. I can facilitate this for you, but I can try and get all you into a room together, but I can't tell you where you should be going or where you're going." Like, that has to come from your business level strategy, which go through your market level strategy, which then filters its way through into what the actual analytics strategy should be.
Yeah. And where this data is being brought within our systems, and regulations are getting harsher with us about, did you collect that with consent? That it could even bring us into areas where we're holding on to data that we ought not to be, or we're doing it in a ham-fisted way and not having. You give several examples of natural interactions that the data that will be used to personalize the experience is asked when the client realizes, oh, if I told you that, you would be able to help me more.
Yes, yeah. And I think, I don't think you should just track or collect data for
data's sake.
No, definitely not. It's not only does it become, it's increasingly becoming more of a risk, but it costs in other ways as well. there needs to be a plan, and there needs to be a reason for every piece of data that we track. So, whether that's just the surface level data or something slightly more deeper than that, there needs to be a value exchange at every point. And again, it kind of links back to why are we doing this, and how do we plan to use this to better improve the customer experience and improve what we're offering. And again, let's have a few other silly examples in the book. The market trader, which is in there as well. It comes back down to, I think, we want to have that information so that we can offer a better service.
Right. And as you point out in that example, the business actually thrives better than competitors because it's done it right.
Yeah, basically. That's the concept.
The reverse is true, right? Those that are collecting data when it doesn't make sense are being creepy. And
don't be creepy.
You do let us off the hook a little bit by saying that things like display advertising and the just over prevalence of cookies, third-party cookies in particular, has drawn, and I'll, admit I'm part of the guilty party, the marketers out there. Oh, I can do this. I can use a retargeting list. Oh, I can do lookalikes. And it has conditioned us to not bother with thinking, but should I? And you argue in one point, you say, when you take us through the first party, second party, third party, you say Google is at best a second party to the client who is sharing information like what sites am I visiting when I'm not on your site. And that you also say, and this is a kind of a prophetic, that when the companies like Google are deliberately withdrawing some of the tools like cookies, you say companies never do that without there being a financial incentive for them, i.e. they are a walled garden. We will soon not have information that they possess, and we will have to go to them to get it. We have to remember, I mean, they have lulled us into a dependence here, and without thinking of our first party data and how we can properly use it, and maybe with things like federated IDs tied into our other systems, we may be beholden to these Silicon Valley giants.
Yeah, and we'll need to tap into that. I think the first point I'll just say, that's just my opinion, and I'm not in any way, a legal representative. That needs to be investigated individually in terms of whether you perceive that to be first, second, or third party. And we're seeing a lot of this stuff come through the courts, and the technology is changing. These different companies are kind of adapting to fit in, but it's certainly not good to be perceived as being third party. Second party is not ideal, and obviously everybody is going towards first party. The second thing, so that concept of these walled gardens, that's something that I've tapped into, and one of the people that I actually quote on the book is a guy called Tom Tessari. He put together, well, you can see that visualization that he put together in terms of like how this is going to drive up the cost to small businesses. I think more interesting is probably like, what's the solution? In terms of what could make things better for companies, small companies, and what that are just trying to reach their audiences. Not everybody can afford like big branding campaigns, what is also good for the customer as well. So we don't have this creepy surveillance going on where like we're collecting the data and just in case we might be able to use it. I think that got too far as well. So what some of the things I have seen that seems to be more prevalent, or people at least trying to get this concept going, is the data does have value, but it has value to us as customers. And is there some way that we can create a situation where, you've got companies owning their data on behalf of is their data. You've come to their website, you're interacting on their site. It's kind of their data in that respect because you've gone onto the site, you've accepted. But it's not creepy, weird data. It's just like things you clicked on and what your interests are in terms of what products you offer and stuff like that. And then you've got your data, which is kind of who you are, and that's a lot of that is private. But in situations where you might want to kind of share some of that data, instead of just giving it all away for free, just to go on to a big tech platform, and where it's or where that Cambridge Analytics scandal, I think that was like you got an app, didn't you? And you put your information into an app, and you didn't think it went any further than that. But I would hope to see some way that individuals would be able to kind of own their own data and sell that for a price, and that might be in the sense of a financial price, or it could be access to something. But anyway, but there's generally the concept that could be traded from an individual point of view rather than the current systems that we have now, which everyone's I think trying to work out the best way. But I definitely do think that this concept of walled gardens, it will continue to benefit some of these massive these platforms because I think there is that sense of being, I think we got a lot for free and now the bill's starting to be paid.
Yeah, and they're degrading the product for regular ads that do not have any information about the audience, unless we go through them.
Well, I think it's tricky for agencies as well. Like I've seen more and more like
they get squeezed.
Well, they're getting removed.
Yeah.
So you started off with, hey, come and buy these ads. We'll run these ads for you through this platform, whatever that platform is. And then we've slowly moved from, okay, well, now the technology is here. We'll just completely automate the whole thing. We'll take all the money. We don't actually need you anymore, agencies. Thanks though. I think so. Yeah, things are changing.
Those humongous tech companies, though they are orders of magnitude larger than us, though, I come away from your book thinking, okay, but if we, and I'm not saying we can replicate what they do, but if we can emulate some of the way that they've done this, we are able to use the same technology backbones and approaches that they did. And for our little microcosm, we may be able to do like a mini Google, like Google has.
I kind of see what you're getting with,
right. And that is a good promise because, boy, look at the billions of us every day who open up those Google tools. We love them, and they do pull off that personalization. To be sure, they compete and have absolutely dominated their competition by competing on personalization. So we should follow suit.
Yeah. Well, and the reason would be just that simple example of if you're offering that value for each piece of information, if you're truly offering back that value, then everybody ends up better off. The customer gets a better experience. You get to sell more things. It's communication happening. It's and obviously there's going to be bad actors. There's always bad actors.
Yep.
But that's why we have laws and government. Well, hopefully, it depends how. I don't want to make this political, but that's why we have laws.
There's a whole other group that can benefit from having tidier data, and it's internal groups. And I want to come to those. But before that, we're going to take a very quick break. We are now putting Funnel Reboot on another platform. It seems some people like to listen to their podcasts on YouTube. So you can now get episodes as they come out by going to the Funnel Reboot channel on YouTube. Okay, Mark, we have an internal, team, and we've got people such as managers and C-level and even CEOs that are asking for a return on this data. They want to understand why they're investing in it. And you do have some points where our data is also effed from a standpoint of the who wants that data, why, what, and when. And you
Yes.
say that if we're using out of the box results, or we're only giving them the information that we consider to be important, if we don't approach it with a plan, that we're doing it wrong. So can you set us right, please?
Uh, well, I think it's more so. I mean, I think analysts and people doing reporting and will probably back me up on this, but there's been, at least in my career, so many situations where I've been doing it wrong, and the reason, or we've been doing it wrong, and often it's because we just take the first request and don't delve in a bit more into the detail of actually what they're looking to get. So, that there's some questions that we have to answer first before we even get on making a dashboard. And normally that's what you kind of end up jumping to. Like, if I make this amazing dashboard for you, you're going to love me, and you're going to use it forever, and then just be so happy with me. It's going to be brilliant. And it never really pans out that way. And so that's why there's almost a whole chapter on this. Is how can we approach this in a different way? Some of the stuff, which is the access to data, which is involved in here, which kind of it kind of identifies some of the key people. There's a pyramid at the top, which for those who follow Avinash will see it's very close to his, and I have definitely quoted him, and I asked his permission to use it, and he's a very lovely man, and he said that was okay. And there's a table below that also breaks up some of that information. So, like, some of the key things that we need to answer are, first of all, I know what your seniority is because it'll be in your title, but how often are you going to need this? How complex is the data going to be? Like, how reliable does it need to be? Why are you really asking me for this? Because do you even want a dashboard or a report? Like, what is it that you really want? Do you actually just want the answers, or do you want to have access? Because if you're now asking me for access, and I don't think that you'll either have the time or the understanding to be able to get at what you want, then I shouldn't do that, even though you've asked me for it. And if you're asking me for a dashboard, and then you're going to take it away, and then you're going to come to the wrong conclusions, and then you're going to send an internal email to everyone, and you've read the metric wrong, and then everybody's going to come to me and say, Mark, why did you create this rubbish report that's wrong? Then I don't really want to do that either.
Right.
And did you actually just want the answer?
What a huge waste of time. Yes.
Yeah.
So you point out, like, there are things that we can get ahead of before we get into those,
time.
shoot the messenger questions.
The
one I love, which is, I think, a beautiful takeaway, is these sorts of things are meant to compare apples to apples. So, let's take something where there is a sale. So either it's e-commerce or B2B, and it happens a little later, but somewhere there is information in a financial system about what happened, right? The end sale, the transaction. And over in your web metrics, or maybe your CDP, is a little bit about, a corresponding interaction. And you must be careful, because if one is an apple and the other one is a pear, and you're, let's say, trying to make a ratio, to say that this is the average order value, or this is the conversion rate. If you mistakenly put those two things together when they have been gathered in different ways, then you're creating data pollution there.
And confusion and lack of trust. And it's not even...
and it's going to kill your credibility.
The whole report's out. The whole dashboard's out. And just on that one point, someone goes, looks at a metric, and doesn't even need to be that complicated. Like, someone looks at a metric on a dashboard, and they don't know whether it's user sessions or visits. And then you've got a situation where we're moving from GA3 to GA4, and you've taken users from GA4, updated your dashboard, which had users from GA3, and they're not the same metric. Well, they are technically the same metric. No, they're not technically the same metric. They're called the same metric, but now they're calculated differently.
Yeah.
And so
So
one of
that
the
time series that you show a line going across,
yeah,
there's going to be a jump in that line you will
yep,
not be able to explain.
yep. And so that's where if that's where it can get really tricky. And so if you've got a big dashboard full of all these different metrics, which they might not actually say what you think they say, and then you try and interpret those, that's where you're going to get into issues where actually a report where you have a dashboard where you have the summary that comes with the dashboard, that may be what would be better in that situation, because someone has had the time and the knowledge to be able to know that users aren't apples, are not apples, they're orange, it's a pear and an apple, but we can still use it because we know it's a pear and an apple. If you don't know it's a pear and an apple, that's where the problem is.
Yeah. And we're going across our organization, and you point out that sometimes the problem can come down to a skills shortage, that each of these people are simply trained differently, or they're looking at different aspects of what the company is trying to achieve. Their OKRs are
Mm-hmm.
at cross purposes, or their skill sets. So you break things into type 1 and type 2 skill areas.
Yeah.
Take us through any of those that
Okay.
are actually fraught with problems if we don't slow down and think about them.
Okay. So there are the type 2 and the type 1. That came out of I had to do. I didn't have to, but I did a presentation at a university in terms of if I was looking to hire students, what would I be looking for? And we did hire some students from that university for different roles. And the key thing, and I put a bit of some jokes in the slide around. You've got the tech data guy, and then you've got the business guy. And I had silly slides about either one. And that links back to the soft and the hard skills, and it links back to the kind of the track 1 and the track 2. And obviously, there's lots of complexities in between, but the idea is that there's kind of this more kind of, you've got the different roles. So you've got the developer, you've got where they might need to technically implement something, and they're kind of enjoying doing that piece. And then you've got the marketer who's kind of often doing a bit more of the, either an agency, they might be doing account management as well. They might be doing kind of more of the speaking and more of the personal human piece
Mm-hmm.
of that. And then they need to work together in that situation. And I think some people have a mix of skills here and there, but I do think there is a definition between those two things, like a bit more of a line between those two things than anything else. Obviously, you've got people from either side. I do think there is that more kind of that harder skill area and that softer skill area. Both are equally valuable, and both are two sides of the same coin. And how I think things are kind of potentially going wrong in that situation would be where you're looking to make a hire, or you're looking to promote someone, and whereas they did really well within their hard skills, and and you kind of you think because they're very good technically, they'll be very good at the next roll up, which is managing a team. It doesn't really often work that way. Where in actual fact, you probably wanted someone that's better at looking after people and managing a team and inspiring those people than how much they know in terms of the technical side. So, but you need to make sure that there's a way in each track that each person can work their way up in the way that they're good in terms of those hard and soft skills. So I think that's tricky, but
Yes.
I think it's possible as long as you identify that you kind of managing people. And we did have a situation where someone came to not a situation, but we had a review, a really nice guy, where someone came and said, I want to manage people. And we said, well, are you sure? Not that he couldn't, but are you sure that's what you want to do? Or are you just saying that's what you want to do because you want more money? And
Yeah.
obviously, you don't really handle it in that way, but you kind of talk to that point or is it because money might not be the thing? Maybe you just want more respect, or you just think that's what you should do to get further ahead. And when we actually had that conversation, it was actually, no, actually I like what I do, but I just don't feel there's any way to progress doing what I do. And so that was the thing to solve, was how do we make sure that you progress doing the thing that you're really good at, rather than trying to take you out something that you might not be so good at.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what I would say about that.
For those track one people that are hard technical,
Yeah.
you also point out we're talking against a backdrop of ChatGPT,
Oh, yeah.
code interpreters, so their own sense of what they are going to be managing. You say,
I
it's
think
possible that they could be directing efforts, but those efforts may not be done by other people. We may have little AIs that are doing the actual writing of code. And so,
and data
but
cleansing, and there's a lot
right,
of things that the AI is specifically very good for in terms of the harder skill side of things. It can do loads of stuff, obviously, all these different apps and tools coming out, but I would be most concerned if I was more in the area of writing code, cleaning data, and things like that. I think that's, you could argue it would just make
concerned, yes. However, if they pivoted to becoming a supervisor, if they supervise the learning that the machines are doing, that's great value that a company could get.
Yeah, I would imagine where you'd have a situation where I think the high value people would be those that really understand the fundamentals of what it means to be a developer and how the tech comes together. So when the AI comes up with something that's wrong, they've got that eye to be able to detect that it's wrong. The quality assurance, and also helping input that information the AI would actually use to create these things. But I think, I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens.
You need them all. You need the people who can do this. You need the data, and you need the infrastructure. One beautiful image that you left me with there was of a race car. Can you just explain to us what the three components are that we can just maybe help as we're closing this to keep it all in mind?
So that again, I love frameworks. The race car also works its way a little bit into the pillars, which is also in the book. So the three things, and I guess I use the race car to try and explain them, and I don't try to do this because I think I'm more intelligent or anything like that. It's just, if anything, the opposite. It's just I'd like things that are easier to remember, because if I can remember it more easily, then and I hope other people remember it more easily, and then it becomes more useful and more valuable. So three pillars would be, so I'm probably going to get this wrong now, but just the analytics maturity side of it. So maturity, it's the tools, and then it's the data as a resource. So
right. So how I think, you said if you have a driver, that driver could be anybody from my 16-year-old son to
so that's the
to Mario Andretti.
Yeah.
Right. Then you've got the Ferrari itself, so the tools and the how great is the engine, and then you describe the data resource as the fuel that goes into it.
Slightly old axiom, but it still works. Data is fuel. It's so do we actually have anything that the car can actually run on? Do we have that? And then we've got the driver, and the driver is the analytics maturity component. So the people within the organization, and they don't have to be in the organization, but they could be your suppliers, your contractors, the people that you can tap on. It's can they drive? Can they actually drive? That's the analytics maturity part. But then also the strategy and the business and the marketing strategy part is, do they know where they're going?
Right.
So I quite like that. So that's how I can see those kind of three pillars coming together, and the car analogy of what's the car? Car is the tool stack. What's the fuel? The fuel is the data, and the driver is the driver is obviously the analytics maturity part, and the marketing strategy and the business strategy.
And this is just one of, many places where either conceptually or right down into what action items someone needs to take to pull off this migration through an analytic maturity curve that a company can do. The book contains it all. And Mark, I can't thank you enough for putting it all together. Where can people go to get the book?
Great. So it's on Kindle.
Okay.
It's on most of the Kindle stores. So you should be able to get it wherever you're listening to this brilliant podcast from. You can should be able to buy the book. So there is a Kindle version, and I think it is still running on Kindle Unlimited at the moment. So if you're a member of that, you can download it for free. And then there is a print version. If you don't appreciate the potty language, that's absolutely fine. There is a much lower rated flawed version, which basically doesn't have the swear words in.
Right.
And there's only a few, there's not a lot. Where I've just replaced the F word with flawed instead. And that was mainly so I could actually just run a few ads. But each to their own.
Oh, okay. Very good. And if people want to find out more about you and reach out, where can they go?
I have a website. It's www.mckenzie.com. And so people sometimes ask me why Mckenzie. I've spent the last 10 years in New Zealand. Lovely country, amazing country. I've really only come back for family, to see family and be with family. I love both countries. And so my surname's Mckenzie, British name. And tui is, you probably, even Americans, I'm sure have heard of the tui bird or seen it. Big, plump bird with a long beak. No, I've got it wrong. That's the wrong bird. The tui is different. That was a kiwi. The tui, the tui is black, and it's got these strange white balls under its neck, and it makes a strange noise that sounds like a car alarm. But beautiful bird. Anyway, sorry, I got that wrong.
So you've blended the two.
I've just imaginatively just thrown those two things together. And when I looked at how much www.mckenzie.com was, that was just too expensive. So www.mckenzie.com. Some of the book content's on there. There's a web form on there as well if you'd like to work with me in any capacity.
I'm so thankful that you've come on the show, and you have absolutely given people a way to get better insight into their marketing so that they can make it even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.